everyone. My name is Mr. Pottigar Vinayak. I am working as an assistant professor in the Department of Information Technology, Walchand Institute of Technology, Solapur. So today's topic of discussion is working with the public clouds, and within this we'll talk about elastic IP addresses for AWS Elastic Compute Cloud, which is EC2. So let's talk about the learning outcomes of this particular module. So at the end of this session, students will be able to understand the concept of elastic IPs. They will be able to demonstrate how to allocate, associate, disassociate and release these particular elastic IPs. So before going across, we will just look across what are the elastic IP addresses. An elastic IP address is a static IPv4 address designed for dynamic cloud computing. An elastic IP address is allocated to your AWS account and is yours until you release it. So an elastic IP address is a public IPv4 address which is reachable from the internet. If your instance does not have a public IPv4 address, you can associate an elastic IP to your instance to enable communication with your internet. So what are the basics of elastic IP addresses? So following are the criteria or characteristics of an elastic IP addresses. The first one is an elastic IP address is a static. It does not change over the time. To use an elastic IP address, you first allocate one to your account and then associate it with your instance or virtual machine or a particular network interface card. When you associate an elastic IP address with an instance, it is also associated with instance primary network interface. So when you disassociate an elastic IP address with an instance or its primary network interface, the instance public IPv4 address is released back to the Amazon's public IPv4 pool. So let's just talk about what you can do with this particular elastic IP addresses. So you can allocate, you can tag, you can associate, you can disassociate, and you can release these elastic IPs over the period of time within your AWS account. So time to demonstrate the working of elastic IP for an EC2 instance. So for that, we will shift to a particular AWS account. When you logged into your AWS account, this is the main dashboard you will get. So accordingly, I need to have a particular EC2 instance to be launched. So I need a particular virtual machine to which elastic IPs can be attached or detached. So if I go across this left hand side instances, so go into the launch instance on the top right corner, and then you can configure these particular machines. So if I am writing this as AWS server, or we can say this is a web server you wanted to configure. Thereafter you need to select any of this particular OS. Okay, so multiple OS are provisioned. So within this I'll select this particular Ubuntu. So in this particular, it will going to use this AMI to install on the respective machine. So we have a choice, different choices to select this particular instance type. I am selecting this particular default T2.micro, and we require to have the key pairs. So why these key pairs are required? So these key pairs through which we can connect with our instance. So this is a particular key which we wanted to download. Now once this gets downloaded, we will reuse this for the connecting operations to with our EC2 instance. And if you see, there is one more portion which is called a security group. We allow our web server, we wanted to configure this particular web server in this. So we allow this particular HTTP traffic to go to our EC2 instance. So by default, next configuration will get the particular 8 GB of root volume where this particular installation will take part. So if you extract this particular advanced details, as I'm saying, we need to use this particular user data, which is a batch processing. We use certain commands to fire when this particular instance will going to launch, and this commands would be executed only once in its lifetime. So put this into this particular user data. Now what it means is, see, we are using this particular bash shell, we are updating this particular OS, then I need to install a web server which is Apache 2. Then we wanted to host a simple HTML page so that we can check later on whether this page will hit or not. And then we will start this particular Apache server. So next onwards, we need to launch this particular instance with this configuration. Now in this particular step, we got the success, and if you just open the instances, if you go back and if you refresh this particular page, you will see this particular instance state is still pending. We'll wait till this particular instance comes into ready state so that we can reutilize this particular instance. Now if you just click around, okay, so it comes to a particular running state. So if you just go down, you have a multiple options to see where I got this particular dynamic IP address to DSCP from the pool which is managed by AWS, and right now this is holding an address of 3.111.37.234. So if I wanted to check whether this particular IP addresses works fine for my website, so we'll check. See, this particular Apache 2 is working right now. We'll wait for some amount of time where this will going to hit my particular default index page. So we have installed that particular EC2, and thereafter we have hit this particular IP address to get back to our hosted site. Now for an instance, if now you need to able to see what happens when this particular running instance, if I stop, okay, so I'm stopping this particular running instance, and if you could see, the instance state is coming across stopping. So we'll wait till this instance changed from stopping state to its stopped state. So what I mean to say is, when this particular instance comes to a stopping state, this particular IP would be released automatically. If you can see, this particular IP got released to the pool which is managed by AWS. Now if I restart this particular machine, we'll wait for some amount of time. So we'll wait till this particular instance comes to a running state again. So what happens within this particular part is, the previously allocated IP address is released back to its pool. Now if we'll see what IP address we will get once this particular instance comes into running state. So if you see, this IP is different from the previous one what we have got it. So now my website is hosted and can be connected through different IPs. Okay, so this particular instance has not started yet, so we'll wait for this particular 2x2 check. So this is still in a initialization phase, so we'll wait for some amount of time and we'll try to hit this particular web server. Okay, see, we got the success and my web server is running to a different IP addresses. So when you start and stop these particular instances, suddenly this particular dynamic IPs would be we get from the DSCP pool which is managed by AWS. So if we wanted to prevent this, you need to go back to the left hand side, which we called as elastic IPs. Okay, so this is comes under networking and security. So just click this particular elastic IP. We'll go across allocating one for us. So this needs to be allocated within the same space where my instance got launched. So in this particular type, see our instance is available in AP South 1B. Now in this particular thing, we got this particular allocate this particular elastic IP. If we just go across, see this is the particular elastic IP which we get. Now next step is you need to attach this particular IP to your associate this particular elastic IP to your running instance. So if I am going across this particular type, so I wanted to attach to this particular instance and coming across this AWS web server which is right now running across. So we'll check. I'll come back, and this is a private IP which is being used within an intranet. So we'll associate this particular IP to my instance. So this IP is elastic 13.200.240.187. So if you just refresh this particular sites, the previous IP was 13.232.95.57. See if we refresh this, see I got this particular elastic IP which is we got it through, and this remains static throughout. So for an example, if I stop this particular instance, we'll wait for the provisioning, you'll see the difference. Still this particular instance is in a particular state of stopping. We'll wait for that particular amount of time where this particular instance gets stopped. It takes a couple of seconds. See, once it got in a particular stop state, if you can see, this IP has not been released. So this is a static IP which we got it for our web server or the instance which we have initiated. Now in this, take a particular time to answer this particular question. How many elastic IPs are reserved for an AWS account by default? So is it 7? Is it 5? Is it only 1? Or is it 10? You can pause the videos and answer the question. So the right answer is B, which is 5. So in this session, we looked after how the elastic IPs are associated with a particular instance. We associate this to an elastic IP, we deassociate this particular elastic IP from the same pool. Thank you.